Hi, Kevin Ledoux, the Pragmatic Luthier. I have stuck with mortise and tenon connections between my neck and guitar bodies pretty much since I started. I don't usually veer away from that too much, but I've always been a little bit dissatisfied with the way I've been bringing them together. So what I want to do is demonstrate today my procedure for doing this with barrel nuts. Now, I know that's not terribly uncommon. There's a lot of people doing that, and maybe there's some simpler ways than what I've come up with. But I want to explain to you as I demonstrate the particular problems that I saw in using barrel nuts and what my solutions are for this. And maybe there's something in the demonstration that you can use in your shop. So I'm going to start with some of the problems that I've seen in the guitars that I've built, or maybe I should say more appropriately, discomfort. In the past, I have used these brass inserts. These happen to be quarter 20 threads in there, which means you're drilling about a 3/8 inch hole to drive these things. And brass inserts, they may work just fine, but getting them in increases the pucker factor by at least 25 or 30%, which is way too much for me. Additionally, when you set these brass inserts, you're really almost required, I think, to flood the area afterward with super glue to make sure that those things are really in there nice and solid. It's a hair-raising experience as far as I can see. And I did a video quite a long time ago about a procedure I have for locating, drilling, and threading those things in without tearing the tenon all to pieces. But it was still a complicated affair, and it required equipment that most people are just not going to have. And I got tired of the whole thing anyway, and I'm still not comfortable with the idea that those things are never going to slip out of there. So I'm going to set that aside. What I'm going to do is use barrel nuts. These are barrel nuts. I'm sure a lot of you know what these are. It's just a steel cylinder that's drilled properly and it's tapped. Now, in this case, these barrel nuts happen to be 3/8 of an inch in diameter. And what that amounts to is 9.5 millimeters. Okay. And they are threaded for these nice number 10 Allen head cap screws, which I prefer to use. I moved away from, even with brass inserts, I moved away from the quarter 20s and went to a smaller insert. So this is the connection that I'm going to make. Now here's the problem that I found with barrel nuts and this connection. If you use a barrel nut that accommodates a larger quarter 20 bolt or machine screw, that barrel nut is going to be a 1/2 inch in diameter. And in a tenon the size of this, that to me is not acceptable at all. It's way too close to this front edge, and in my view it doesn't have the adequate strength that I want it to have. It makes the whole thing very fragile as I see it. Now, I suppose I could lengthen the tenon. That would then require, of course, that I machine the mortise in my heel block deeper. That would require that I make my heel block a little bit thicker. And I suppose I could do that, but I don't care to. I just don't want to do it. I'm not interested in adding any more weight to the instrument with mass in the heel block than I have to. And because I'm a contrary fellow anyway, I thought I'd rather do this my way. So I'm going to demonstrate what I'm doing with these barrel nuts to get them in there, because they take up less space, as you can see here. Now, I know you're probably already thinking, well, where am I going to get these? And I did a little bit of research before I decided to do this demonstration. You can get smaller barrel nuts like this. I found them at McMaster-Carr. Whether or not they would be available through Amazon, to be honest, I didn't look. But they are available. I'm not buying them, however. I made these, and I've set up a system by which I can cut these to length, and I can drill them and thread them with reasonable dispatch. And that's what I'm going to do, I think, from this point forward. Plus, just going backwards a little bit, it's gotten to the point where uh, one of these brass inserts threaded for 1024 machine screws has gotten to be, in my neighborhood, $1.30 a piece. And horse hockey, I just don't want to pay that. I'd rather do this. So I'm going to bring in and show you my procedure for doing this. So I've got a rim set here, which you already saw in the last scene, I guess. And I have this mock-up neck. Now, this is all going to be, the rim set will become a guitar eventually, but I thought this mock-up would be a little easier to work with. I don't have a neck blank made up for this yet, so I'm just going to do this. Now, as you all know, I'm sure, this requires that you have your neck joinery prepared, you've got it fitted, you've got the proper neck angle and so on, and you're good to go. Now it's just a matter of determining where the pieces of hardware go and getting them installed. Now I'm doing this with this open rim because it will be easier for you to see what's happening, and that's going to be important. But I tested this procedure before I did the film on a guitar body that I have that's closed up. Excuse me. And it does work. The only difference being that you wouldn't be able to see what I'm doing in here, and you're fishing around in the dark in there. So the first thing after my neck is fitted is I need to reach inside the instrument because I need to spot these pre-drilled holes. I suppose you maybe could go in the opposite direction and put your barrel nuts in first, but I like to do this. I'm now doing my heel blocks. I used to do them between jigs and drill presses and so on, and now I'm doing them all on a milling machine because everything is absolute. There's just no question about the precision and the alignment of drilled holes, counter bores, the mortise being perfectly centered on the heel block and so on. So I assemble my neck here, and now I'm going to spot those holes. And the way I do that is I reach in the instrument with this tool. I'll show this a little bit closer. This is just a 3/16 rod because the holes that are drilled in my heel block are 3/16. And backing up again just a little bit, those holes are drilled the same size as this fastener. This is a 3/16 fastener, 3/16 hole. And the reason is because that's what allows me to spot the holes that I'm going to have to drill in the neck. So, assembled again here, and I'm going to reach into the instrument through the sound hole, but you'll be able to see this, and I'm going to try and pull this down where you can get a little better look. I'm going to reach into this thing with this tool, feeling my way around, the old drive-in movie trick again, and I'm just going to spot those holes, holding the neck firmly and making sure it's in position, which I didn't do. There we go. Okay, so I've spotted those. This, by the way, is a very simple tool. It's a 3/16 rod. I have formed a point on it. I did that on my lathe, but you could do this with a file in your drill press, provided that this is a little shorter so that you're not bending the piece or it's not wobbling. I put a large handle on it so that I can get a grip on it, and I cut off a nice flat facet on it so that when I reach in the guitar, this facet doesn't interfere with a brace that would be in that approximate position, which has been an issue. I found that I had to do that. So this works pretty well. I like this. So now I have in here, I have my holes spotted. So the first thing I'm going to do is make some marks on here and determine the rest of my drilling points. So now, from those spotted holes, I'm going to square across there, each one. Hope you can see this. My hands are probably in the way. But I'm squaring across there. And then I'm going to grab a combination square. And I'm going to square downward from there, so that I can see where those holes are on the side of the tenon. Now, the next step, is sort of critical. What I want to do now is figure out where I'm going to drill to put those barrel nuts through there. Those barrel nuts are 3/8 of an inch thick, and I don't want to just come out half the diameter. I want to give myself a little bit of space because I don't want that drill to touch that neck heel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out 7/32 of an inch. And I'm sorry, I'm not converting this for those of you that work in metrics. Pardon me for not doing that. I hope you'll forgive me. So I've spotted those two holes, and I'm going to take an awl because there is no room for slippage here. And I'm going to spot those holes. And then I'm going to go over to my drill press and I'm going to drill those. So there's my holes drilled for the barrel nuts. And now I need to drill into the end of the tenon at those spotted holes. Now these two holes can be considerably less accurate, I suppose, because you just want those machine screws to fit through them. But there is another thing to be considered. I'm using 1-inch screws for these, and it will penetrate just beyond, that screw will penetrate up into that heel just a little bit. So I'm going to drill those right through and give myself a little more room here. So the required size for that drill, of course, would be at a minimum 3/16 of an inch to accommodate the machine screw. But I'm going to go up to 7/32 of an inch to give myself a little bit of clearance. And obviously we want this to be somewhat precise, but perfection is not absolutely required. So I feel comfortable in eyeballing this up for square and so on. And I'm penetrating down into that neck heel. Just enough to accommodate the length of that machine screw. So I'm inserting my barrel nuts, and they're going to fit tight because I drilled a 3/8 hole. I have a 3/8 rod, and so that might be a little bit snug in there. There is nothing wrong, I found, with taking a rat tail file and doing a little bit of judicious filing inside there. But I've got a reasonable fit here, so I press that barrel nut in there, and I'm just going to take this awl and pull that around till I can get the thread where I can see it nicely. And then I thought, well, you know, you could drill an oversized hole and let it be a little sloppy in there. It might be helpful. But it proves not to be helpful because if the barrel nut rotates, you can't get the machine screw into it when you put it in the guitar, and it just becomes a mess. So what I thought of was just taking two pieces of 3/16 24 thread rod and installing them in the nut to hold them in the right place. And then I'm going to install those right through those drilled holes. Now at this point, that's going to be a snug fit, so I can open those holes up to a larger size, which I'm not going to do with this because I have to go through this procedure in reality. So I'm just going to have to suffer these through here. Hope I've got them fitted well enough to slip through there properly. And it's not easy because those thread rods don't like to go through, you know, the threads gall on the wood itself. So there it is, and I'm fitted where I want to be. So now what I would do is I can tweak those a little bit, and I'm going to reach inside the guitar, and I'm going to take one at a time. I'm going to take these pieces of thread rod out of there. Taking a second here. And of course, then I can reach in with my fastener and put it in position. Now, this is easy because there's no top here. I thought I would show you quickly. These are 3 different tools that I've made for driving those machine screws. You can slip down into the sound hole with them, depending on the size of the instrument and so on. So I just reach in, and this is one where you really have to feel your way around to get those together. But it works, and it works pretty well. And so I'm going to tighten one first before I remove that other piece of thread rod. So now we take that out of there. And of course, I install my last fastener. This is much easier with the rims wide open. You know, it's admittedly tougher when that guitar is closed up and you're working through the sound hole, but it is doable. So there it is. It's beautifully tight now. Just going to reach in there once more. So there it is, beautifully tight, rigid, and I think you can see in there, if I put the rim right over the camera, you can see what we've got in there. So there's my procedure for doing this. Simple enough, I think, and I hope you got something out of the presentation. I am, as I mentioned, I'm making my own barrel nuts, and I'm going to push this a little bit further. I'm going to try and get the diameter of those barrel nuts down to 5/16 of an inch. Now, I didn't demonstrate making barrel nuts because it wasn't really the subject here today, and it does require a little bit of specialized equipment, but I think I might be able to develop a way that some of you can make your own, even if you don't happen to have a metal lathe and things like that. Maybe that could be done. So if you'd like to see something like that, put it in the comments section, and you know, if somebody really wants to see that, I'll set up a video and demonstrate the tools that I made up and the gadgets I'm using to make those barrel nuts. At any rate, my attention is diverted to the herd of deer out in the yard right outside the shop here, so I'm going to go have a good look at them. Thanks for watching. Please put a like on the video, subscribe to my channel if you have not done so, and thanks again very much for watching.